Welcome to Getting Started with Polymer Clay. Today I am going to share with you 5 tips and tricks to using white clay and keeping it as clean as you can. If you're familiar with working with white clay, you know how frustrating it can be where it picks up every little bit of lint and dust on your work surface. Hopefully, after today, you'll know a few things that will help you. Without further ado, let's get started. Tip number 1. Keeping a clean work surface. In between projects, you can wipe down your work surface and tools with an alcohol solution such as hand sanitizer or rubbing alcohol. Your work surface also includes the air around you, so try to keep dust and lint to a minimum. Tip number 2. Cleaning your hands with a scrap of white clay. Since white clay is so good at grabbing lint and dust, you can use this to your advantage and take a small piece of white clay as a sacrifice to clean your hands with. I do this before every project working with pale clay, and it takes most of the dirt off of my hands and safely onto the scrap. Here you can see the difference this one simple step makes. Tip number 3. Handle your projects gently. This tip is something I tell all polymer clay artists when they're starting out because it's very helpful with all sorts of projects. But the basics are, if you hold your projects without squeezing them too hard and without putting too much pressure, then the lint and dust doesn't have a chance to get trapped within the surface of the clay and you can easily clean it off. Here you can see me holding the project and turning it with only a small amount of pressure. I'm keeping it very lightly in my hand, just enough to keep it in place so that I can shape it with my needle tool, but not so hard that I am denting any of the details. If you do happen to see a stray hair or piece of lint on your project as you're working, you may be able to gently brush it off with your finger, or if it's more deeply embedded in the clay, what I like to do is use my knife tool to scrape it off. Basically, you're going to want to shave it gently using the smallest amount of pressure possible, as you see me doing here. Tip number 4. Desaturating bold colors with translucent clay. Another challenge with working with white clay is that bright and dark colors have a tendency to stain it. For example, working with red clay has a tendency to stain your pristine white into more of a pink color. You can avoid this somewhat by using your scrap piece of white clay, but another way you can do it is to desaturate the red using translucent clay. Take your desired amount of red clay and a roughly equal amount of translucent clay and mix the two together until they are properly combined. When you do this, the resulting color will be less opaque, but it should be no less vibrant. And, more importantly, the pigments that would normally be staining your white clay are now evenly distributed through the translucent clay. There's no exact perfect ratio of translucent to regular color in my opinion. Through experimentation, I figured out roughly the right amount of translucent clay that works for me, but I would encourage you to try different levels of translucent versus pigmented clay and see whether or not you like the effect. Even with this technique, I still find it important to keep your work surface, your tools, and your hands clean in between changing clay colors, because you never know if you didn't add enough translucent or if there's another color that, say, you bumped into that could possibly stain the white. Tip number 5. Cleaning your finished project with an alcohol solution. This is not a technique that I typically use myself, but it is one that I've seen plenty of other crafters use, and I have tested it out and I know that it does work. Basically, you take a cotton swab and a small amount of alcohol solution, such as rubbing alcohol or hand sanitizer, and you rub it along the top layer of clay in order to clean off any dust or debris. And there you have it. Those are my 5 tips and tricks for working with white clay. Hopefully you enjoyed watching, and these tips will help you make your next white clay project just a little bit easier. Have a wonderful day. When you do this, the resulting color will be slightly Asa? Apparently my bird wants to sing instead. You're such a silly boy.